This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast, and I'm John Shegerian. I'm so honored today to have the first time ever in 13 years, the great mother-daughter team of Arndrea Waters King and Yolanda Renee King. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, both mom and daughter.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And,
Absolutely.
But it's a total honor and it's a pleasure. And, you know, we're still living during this COVID-19 tragic period. We're doing this all via technology on Zoom. You're today in Atlanta?
We are.
And I'm in Fresno, California, but I feel like we're in the same room. So it's really wonderful to have a chance to be together, even during these tough times, that we get to share a nice conversation and we get to share with our listeners and our viewers a little bit about both of your backgrounds and some of the things that are on your mind right now. And with that, Arndrea, I want to ask you a little bit first. Tell us a little bit about your background leading up to marrying your husband and your activism and what you were doing before you got married and what you've been doing since.
Such a loaded question.
That's okay.
Since here, no.
Okay.
All that I've been doing. But I am, and again, first of all, thank you again for having us. We have been looking forward to this, particularly for the two of us to be able to do this together and have some time with you, John, and your audience.
Thank you.
So it's really great. I am an activist. I monitored for many, many years hate crimes and hate groups. So we monitor groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazi, skinheads, various white supremacist groups in the mid to late 90s. And what made my work a little bit unique is that I actually helped communities that have been impacted by these particular groups. And my organization was the first organization that looked at the connectedness. So we were the first organization to monitor hate crimes against Black people, against gay, lesbian, transgender, anti-Semitism, anti-Arab, so we were the Native American. So we were the first group to look at the interconnectedness and bring communities together to hopefully do something to, as a community, to impact in a positive way, in particular after hate crimes had happened in communities. So I organized the first hate crime summit that brought together the various communities, and we helped communities organize, we helped to pass legislation. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow.
Now I am happily the president of the Drum Major Institute,
Right.
which is the organization that was founded by Martin's father, Yolanda's grandfather in 1961. And originally it was the only organization that he founded solely. He and his lawyer, Harry Wachtell, founded it together. And the original purpose was to bail out civil rights protesters, to raise money for bail so that when they went to jail, that they would be able to be released.
Wow.
And now we are bringing the work into the 21st century.
That's just so wonderful. And Yolanda, tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, of course, mine isn't as detailed. I've only been around for 12 years.
Okay. I've seen you speak. I've seen some of your speeches. You've done a lot more than a lot more people I've ever seen in 12 years. So just share a little bit about what you've been doing and what grade you're in now.
Okay, well, I am in 7th grade, and for as long as I can remember, I've had an urge for change. This is what my parents do. This is what I see them do. at a young age, I was taught. I mean, of course, my parents always taught me the beauties of this earth. However, I was also taught, and maybe they didn't really teach me, but I saw the inequalities in this world. I would say maybe when my career, or yeah, when my activism really started, and it's just at the very beginning still,
Yeah.
when activism just really started, was, I would say, and most people would think during the March for Our Lives, but I would say a couple years before that when I was 7. And we were invited to meet the president, which was at the time President Obama. And so we were invited to go to the Oval Office because there was a bus that was newly installed, and it was a bus of my grandfather. And so my parents were like, okay, since we're seeing the president, we would like you to come up with a good question to ask him. And it's like, we can help you as well. And I was like, I think I can figure it out. And so,
Wow.
I was seeing all this and so I asked the president, I said, Mr. President, what are you going to do about these guns?
Wow.
And that's when everything, I guess that's when I started to become an advocate during March for Our Lives, and an advocate, because when I was in 4th grade, that was when the tragedy at Stoneman Douglas High School,
Mhm.
Right.
yeah, the tragedy occurred then, and I was scared, time that kids my age, kids 7, kids younger than that, may be worried about going to school, or even people in general. In general, my parents told me you don't want to, you want to be cautious, but you don't want to live your life in fear. And it's just scary to see that all these events are causing children to live, their life in fear. And as I'm seeing these events and what happened last summer, and just in general, especially children of color, Black children as well, that even walking in the road, or their parents having to tell them. I've seen all sorts of ads, instead of talking about college, the parents are teaching them, certain ways to behave, so law authorities, so police don't see you as suspicious, unsuspicious. And
Right.
it's heartbreaking. And so I guess for the last, well, I guess my whole life, I feel like I've been some sort of advocate. But like I said, I would, well, if you count my first, it's a long story, but if you count my first speech, I was 4. But when I really started doing work, I was, I was 7. And so,
Incredible.
yeah. And so, yeah, there's my first speech where I'm like, hi, my name is, and it was for my grandmother. It was at the King Center for my grandmother's, it was her birthday.
A birthday.
Yeah, it was her birthday. And so I was like, hi, my name is Yolanda. I remember the whole speech. I introduced myself, and I said that my grandmother said to be our best selves. And then I was like, happy birthday, Coretta Scott King. And then you can hear my squeaky voice. And so, but I would say that I would like, when it comes to actually making change, it's been in me for a while, my whole life, but since I was 7, so about 5 years. 5 years ago.
Well, what's interesting too about that story, Yolanda, is that it just dawned on me, it's a full circle moment, because I mentioned that I organized the first hate crime summit in 1997.
Right.
And we brought in activists. We had over 100 partners with all different types of organizations, and we brought activists from all over our nation to discuss this in Atlanta. And the keynote speaker for that conference was Coretta Scott King.
Oh my God.
Kind of a full circle moment of your first.
I want to go back to another question that I have for you, Arndrea. You see my children here above my shoulder. They're both now 34 and 28. And they're both lawyers, and they're also both socially minded. I'm always shocked, and now my daughter has a little baby girl, and what I'm always amazed. Thank you. Thank you. And so what I see with your daughter is, first of all, she looks so much like you. She has your smile, and the room lights up. So how young were you when you started your activism, and do you see the same seeds that drove you to be an activist as a young professional in Yolanda? Is that how did you start that young, or were you in your teens? Where did yours come from? Was it from your parents? What was the genesis of your activism?
Well, it's I think when people think about activists, sometimes they think kind of, there's only one way to participate, and certainly going to demonstrations and doing petitions, or, that's certainly any type of direct action is one component of activism, and a very important component.
Right.
I also remind people that anytime that you're doing something in service to others, you're doing something in service to something larger than yourselves. That is a tremendous form of activism. I was raised where my mother was always giving. I don't believe she passed away 2 years ago. And I don't believe she ever attended a march other than the marches that I organized. So later in her life, she attended many marches.
Right.
But what she always did in our household, she led by example. She was always giving, always. It was a way of life for her. It was a way of life to think about others, to certainly think about those less fortunate, to always, she was a huge, even though she was a mother, she was a registered nurse. She was the first Black registered nurse in her hometown of Live Oak, Florida. She always was, as full as her plate was, there was always room at our table for someone who was in transition and needed a home. There was always volunteering for groups of, whether it was the mentally challenged, groups that people did not, particularly, in the 80s, I think hopefully things have changed, but groups that people weren't necessarily on the front lines of thought. She was also on the front lines of working with AIDS patients in the 80s, when a lot of healthcare workers, even at that time, didn't understand the AIDS epidemic, and they didn't want to, necessarily even treat AIDS patients. And so she would be the one that would make sure she did a whole curriculum and a video to show nurses in particular how to treat AIDS patients with compassion. And she volunteered at, showing people CPR or checking blood pressure. So in our household, it was always a normal thing. So I was raised up in that spirit. So it became a natural evolution to continue to look and see ways in which we could all serve society. And I think on top of that, and then the other part was I was born with it. So when you combine those two, it
a mother that didn't just preach it, she actually showed it. She with her action.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so great that you bring that up. Service, the word service. Here, this is my office and my where I do my podcast, but this is how we make our living here. We're a recycling company. So I'm going to tell you a funny little story that you can't see in my office, actually. When you walk in the front door, we have quotes all over the walls, just like motivational quotes. But when you walk into our offices, there's only one quote over the front door. And the quote over the front door is, everyone could be great because everyone can serve.
Absolutely.
And that, is your father-in-law and your grandfather's great quote. And to me, that still means the most. Like you said, Arndrea, serving is just, and Yolanda, you asked me a great question when we were off the air. I think you should be running this podcast, actually. It's a question that made me think even more now that we've been starting to talk. What made you start this, and why do you do this podcast? Well, I think once I started reading about your mom and about you and about all the great things you're doing and how you're making the world a better place, I love that you've made guns your issue. Because frankly speaking, I could see how children are scared of guns. I'm 58 years old and I've never owned a gun in my life, and I'm scared. of all the gun violence that exists. But I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in 92 and 93, we lived in LA, my family, and we had what was then called the LA riots. It was a bad time to live in LA because it was just sad to see your own city fighting with each other. But there was a gentleman named Father Greg Boyle who started a company with me, a nonprofit called Homeboy Industries. And Homeboy, what we did is we got ex-gang members from East LA into jobs. But he had a great line that I want you to think about. Nothing stops a bullet faster than a job. And now that you asked me that question when we started, I thought back to, why am I so drawn to your mom and to you and all the important work you're doing? Because guns were a problem back then, and they're a bigger problem now. And hopefully great people like both of you can help reverse that tide and help us go back to a better way of being, whatever better means. But I'll tell you what, more guns is not a better society, that's for sure.
And it takes all of us. One of the things when you were talking about, John, the fact of the quote about everybody can be great because everybody can serve, is that from his earliest writings to the time of his death, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the beloved community. And what we as a family firmly believe is that it's all of us doing our part. We have to become a coalition of conscious. And it's all of us doing our part in our own unique ways. The way that you contribute, John, is different than the way that I would contribute, that the way Yolanda will contribute, the way that Martin will contribute, the way that each of your listeners can or will contribute. And that's great. The thing is that as long as we all contribute using our powers and our passion and our talents, it's each of us, as long as we just kind of idolize Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King and putting them on a shelf, and really we have to find a way to live up to their ideals. And it's all of us tapping into our talents and our powers and our passions in our own each unique way that we will indeed create that beloved community. And we all have different ways of serving, and that's fine, but do it.
And to add on to what my mom says, and I to kind of interpret this or rephrase this, I think, like she said, you shouldn't idolize my grandparents, but we should acknowledge and make their teachings, because these are really teachings. Like, most people think, oh, it's in a book, it's just documented information. Okay, good. But this is actually these are actually teachings. These are actually lessons that can be very applicable and should be applicable to our everyday lives.
It's so true. Now, did I get this right in my homework about both of you? Are you the only grandchild of Martin Luther King?
That's right.
Wow. Wait a second. And I just want to give a little shout out again for our listeners or viewers who just joined us. We're so honored today to have with us Arndrea Waters King and Yolanda Renee King, and two great organizations that they represent today is a Drum Major Institute, and you can find the Drum Major Institute at Drum Major Institute, which is spelled just INST.org, drummajor.inst.org, or MLKing3 with the number 3.com. Yolanda, I got to say this. I was feeling really hopeless the last year or so with the loss of John Lewis, with the loss of Elijah Cummings, Helen Reddy, who you don't remember, who was a famous singer that talked about woman and woman empowerment, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and even Maya Angelou being gone. And then I read and watched all your videos, and I watched Amanda Gordon before the inauguration and before the Super Bowl. And now, after watching both of you young ladies, I have a whole new vision of hope, because I see who's going to step into the void that exists when those icons like John Lewis and Elijah Cummings and even Ruth Bader Ginsburg have now left us to go on to a better place. I see the young people who are going to step into the next roles of leadership. What does youth and leadership mean to both of you, and what's going on now in America in terms of of the next generation coming up and stepping up to lead the way to a better society.
Can I start?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So personally, most people, underestimate the power, not just the power, what young people are, capable of doing. Most people were like, "Oh, let the adults handle this." This
Right.
isn't really. They think it isn't really a youth issue. And if you think about it, in the civil rights movement, the people weren't like all like how do I say this without like
Okay.
Without saying the word old.
they
They were
like,
all students and young, is what you're
they
trying
were
to
all
say?
like young, younger. Yeah. So some of them were like my age. Some of them, I'm in middle school. Some were in high school. Some were in elementary school. So some of them were like, around my age when I first started activism, like as young as second grade, even I believe. Definitely fourth graders were in it. Third graders were involved. Fifth graders. I don't think they had middle school back then.
They didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. But they were elementary school students. And there were also, high school students. There were college students. If you look at all these people like John Lewis during the civil rights movement, they were college students. And also, if maybe kids want to be inspired, and I would also like to promote this for your viewers in the podcast, and maybe for your viewers' children or young people watching this, that if you're interested, maybe go, the congressman or the former congressman has a series of books called March, and it's in graphic novel form, and it's really, informative, really inspiring. It's just like, wow, like these people really, they went through all this, so we would be able to go to school together. We would be able to sit and there's still so much to do, and so I think that could help as like a directions guide, like when you're putting together something and there's like that directions book. I can't think of the name. I think it's called
Instruction
manual.
manual.
Yeah, the instruction
Right.
manual. So that's like an instruction manual. Maybe if you want to go advanced, you can look at, because I feel this is like a very good time for it, and maybe even for adults more, and especially and young people. I inspire you. It's a good challenge and stuff, but maybe even try, reading one of my grandfather's his last book, which he wrote in 1967, I believe.
Mhm.
Is called "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" And so I recommend for people to also read that, because that's another what's it called?
Instruction manual.
Instruction manual.
Incredible.
But for
Well,
the,
and what's powerful about that
Mhm.
is that was his last book,
yes,
and
that's
so
what I'm saying. And
no,
it's
what-
like this time.
and all it's
It's
very
relevant to
appropriate.
this
Yeah, it's
time.
like he wrote it yesterday or last year.
Right.
But also what is interesting about that is like that is where he left off. And it almost every time I read it, it almost is like, and then I imagine him saying, okay, and here, now you and handing to us the baton to
Yes,
to
'cause
do our part in the
maybe
race.
back then when he wrote it, maybe people would have been like, but now it's like the missing pieces that have been here. Like you're finding all the other pieces, and it's finally clicking together. So for youth people, I want to inspire, and for the youth component, for people that are already doing work, I would like to say, congratulations, keep on working hard. And for those who maybe aren't as appealed or don't know how to enter yet, I would say start with those books, especially for young people. Start with March, and also start with that book as well. March by John Lewis, and that's March from John Lewis, and Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, from my grandfather Martin Luther King. And so, also I would just like to, if people are wondering how can they contribute, it could even be things like, or not things, but like starting a group of people that are starting a club with a group of people that have the same passion as you, or starting some like you don't even or going to the next rally in your community. I know everything is kind of closed and slowed down because of COVID, but once everything opens up, there are always constantly people, and I've been part of those that will come into communities, and there will be rallies. So look at those rallies in your communities. There are BLM protests occurring, so you can also look at those close to your community. And you don't even have to be like most people think. Oh, I have to be the best speaker, which is what people say is a roadblock, a road you can't a roadblock
Right,
for people
right.
not getting involved. But you can do things like you can be an artist. There are people that took pictures, to rate like Gordon Parks and raised awareness about poverty. There are people that wrote poetry and books such as Maya Angelou, and there are just all these people. There are people that sing like Motown and Stevie Wonder and everybody. And so there you can find your talent.
I love it. And that's you're so beautifully said, Mom. What do you think, Andrea? What about what just happened? We just now, for the first time in our lives, have a woman vice president, a woman of color, both, which is really great. Not only is she half black, I think, but she's also half Southeast Asian, if I'm not.
That's
What
correct.
is, being a mom, being a parent of especially a daughter, which both you and I are, what does that mean to you? And what dreams do you have for this little amazing 12-year-old sitting next to you that the world is the limit for? I mean, it's limitless. The sky is so big right now.
Well, we're getting ready to, we're in the midst of Black History Month, and we're getting ready to, go into Women's History Month.
Oh, good point.
I think it can't be stated enough how much it means to, representation is so important. And regardless of your political beliefs or aspirations, we all have to celebrate anytime history is made in a positive way. And so if you are a woman, or you love a woman, or you have a female, I mean, there is no way that you cannot be ecstatic and proud of this moment. It is, to live history is it truly is extraordinary. It really, really is. And it's inspirational because when you can see yourself, it's one thing. I think, all parents and teachers and advisors are, we always want to, and telling our kids about the best that they can be, and pushing them or stretching them. And that is very important. And it is so important to see yourself, which is in a lot of ways what Black Lives Matter, the BLM movement is about. Certainly it's about equality and being treated equal. It also is having a seat at the table at every part of society. And when you can see that representation there, it really means something. And so I could go on and on about how wonderful of a moment in time. When you really think about it, America, we were behind the curve, and I'm celebrating where we are now. But when you think all over the world, there have been, going back, at least 50 years, if not more, on every continent but ours, a female in the place of power, rather as actually the head of state or the vice president. So the fact that yes, I'm celebrating and I'm happy. And there's also a part of me that wants saying, what took so long?
Right.
So.
Yolanda, I know this answer will change over time and evolve, but you're so well spoken and you're such a big thinker already at 12 years old. If you could tell me, John, here's how the next years ahead of me are going to go. What is your dream? Is your dream to become a lawyer and an activist and then a politician one day, or to become a writer? Or what are you thinking of today when you dream your big dreams about your future?
So you mean like in a more global basis, or what I want to do when I grow up personally?
Both, whatever you're thinking about. I want to know what's on your mind.
So well, actually, when you said like I actually do the first thing that you said, when I get older, in terms of working in jobs in my career, I actually do want to be an activist and lawyer. Um,
Both of my children are lawyers. I said, be a lawyer first, and then you can do anything. And my daughter is a women's rights lawyer for employment lawyers. So I'm huge supporter of that, Yolanda. I think that's a great choice. That's just me. I don't know what mom and dad. I don't know what mom and dad said, but don't say anything. Don't say I didn't say anything.
They encourage, well, my mom and dad, and this is what I love about my family, like they encourage me, to do anything that I feel, like, you can say in
your passion,
my
what you're
passion, what I
calling to
feel
find.
Right.
what I want to do.
That's
Great. And so they never, and and I'm gonna get back to the question, but
Okay, good.
they never forced me to, become activist, or they never said, okay, you have to be an activist. I kind of just, I kind of just followed it and picked it up myself. And
Yeah.
so, and I think that's what many people misinterpret about activism children, or whose parents were maybe activists, or whose parents were in a career. And I feel and so, but even at a young age, my parents felt, well, now Yolanda, we are very proud of you. However, we know that if you don't want to do this, there are other ways you can contribute. We want you to find something that you feel happy about. It's fine. They always motivate me to help and even like, or in some way help the community and stuff, and just help the world. And but my vision is, I hope, and not I hope, but one day that there will be no poverty, especially in this country, the wealthiest nation. Would you say the wealthiest continent? I don't know, but one of the wealthiest nations, and you're constantly, and maybe now less. I leave the house less because of COVID, but
Right.
I'm constantly, even before then, or even when I go out of the house now, in our downtown area of Atlanta, and just everywhere, but especially, when I'm running errands with my parents and stuff, and in the downtown area, there's constantly always homeless people, and it's just heartbroken to see that, and so and the fact, or like even a few days ago for a big trip, we were in Mexico, and we were seeing, there were some kids that were not, it was a weekend, however, and this was like for human rights work, but when we were going there were children, and even though it was during the weekend and stuff, it looked like they were not going, and many of them don't go to school because they have to support their families, and it's just heartbroken that they can't finish their education. Like maybe they want to be a doctor one day, and that requires your first, how many years are you in school, Mom?
A lot.
Like a lot. That requires your first consecutive. Well, actually,
like your first years,
consecutive.
It's kindergarten through 12th grade here, so 13 years.
Well,
and then
it could be different there, and even kids here, it's common. People, you just don't see it as much, but your consecutive, like 13 consecutive years of school, and if you don't have those years, you either have to stay back, and that can be very challenging, especially especially if the years keep on stacking. Like if it's 1 year, you'll have to stay one grade, which I guess isn't as bad. But like say if you have to work for 4 years straight, imagine all the work and all the school you have to catch up on, or 5 years or 6 years. There's some kids that maybe they dropped out of school in 3rd grade, and even now as they're my age, they still have to work to support their family because taxes has risen, or for various other reasons, and especially because of COVID, all the businesses have gone out of business.
Got it pretty lucky. We have it lucky, huh?
Yeah. So poverty, and of course, I don't need as much of a summary or for this one. gun violence, and just abolishing that, and even just guns in our society in general. I was shocked. I think a few months ago I learned this, that it's easier to purchase a weapon or or a gun, than it is to get a driver's license, and that's scary. The reason why police, well, there's other reasons why, but one of the reasons why police carry guns is because people carry them, and the fact that, like, and this kind of this segues to my next issue, with not just our criminal justice system, or not just with our not just with just racial injustice, like many people in general, like many people think, and it's the same thing in all countries, like many people think that after segregation here, after apartheid in South Africa, racism just disappeared, like how it just disappeared. And that's not true. It's unfortunate. It's still here. It's not as severe, I would say. It's gotten much, much better. However, there's still far to go, and nobody should feel scared to go to places, like kids, Black kids, like I said, I saw a commercial the other day, and the mom was, or not even the other day, it was a few months ago, and the mom was talking about how she had a Black son who got great grades in school. And, instead of, talking about college decisions when he comes home, and I think my parents have seen this one too, she has to kind of talk about or go over with him, how to, like, not even protect yourselves, but how to present yourself in a certain way so you're not seen as a threat to our communities. And she's like, and I should be talking with him about colleges and stuff. And it's sad.
Isn't that crazy? It's a different dialogue that's happening in some households, comparatively speaking, which just doesn't make sense in 2021. Arndrea, talk a little bit about the Drum Major Institute. God willing, we're going to get through this crisis. Science is going to win. We're going to get vaccinated. What do you want to do? What's your goal and vision with the Drum Major Institute rest of this year and the years to come?
Well, our goal is to build that coalition of conscience that we talked about. Martin's father and mother worked on the eradication of what Dr. King called the triple evils of racism, poverty, and violence. And what we hope to do is to help eradicate those triple evils through the embracing of the values of peace, justice, and equity. So we are in the process of retooling and expanding our work, but it is around those three pillars. And so it'll be through public awareness and education, so that if you are an activist, or if you are a stay-at-home mom, or you're an elected official, you can come to the Drum Major Institute or dad. Sorry, thank you. Or if you're a stay-at-home dad, thank you, Yolanda. Or an educator, but you can come to this interactive and innovative website and get tools and techniques and curriculum to implement in your life. So public, awareness, or lifting up people in their communities that are doing great work, because I think sometimes we think that the problem is too large, or what can I do? So we are looking at finding drum majors for justice in communities and lifting up those voices so that people can see how they can make an impact. And also with that work, you're solidifying their work and hopefully connecting people in various ways. We also are working on public policy. Any public, the first two would be the John Lewis Restoration Voting Rights Act, to make it easier for people to vote. So we're working on that, as well as the George Floyd Policing Act. So we're working on public policy, laws, and legislations that lift up, again, the banner of peace, justice, or equity.
And you have lawyers and other activists working underneath you back in DC and other places to try to push these initiatives forward, I take it?
Well, what we truly believe in is partnership, because we really believe that, again, in order to democratize the King legacy, it's really us all connecting with each other. So we partner with organizations or attorneys or groups that are doing the work. Because if we can also, one of our fundamental beliefs is if we could use whatever influence we have or to lift up all of the people to help solidify the work in various ways, and also shed the light on and acknowledge the work. That's how we, through creating partnership and collaborations, both with us and with each other, is how we, again, is one way of working to build a coalition of conscience and also getting to creating the beloved community.
And for our listeners and viewers out there, to find Arndrea and all of her colleagues and partners at the Drum Major Institute, you go to www.drummajor.org. Yolanda, I watched you at one of your rallies, and I saw your chant, and I just wanted to go over this because I want to break it down with you. Spread the word, have you heard? All across the nation, we are going to be a great generation. Walk me through that.
So it's kind of like, how do I put, it's like, not even a gossip, not even a rumor, but how do I put, like,
an actual fact?
Yes, like a healthy gossip, kind of like, have you heard that there's going to be a word, and that we are going to be the great generation that will get to the promised land? We are going to be the great generation, not just with recognition, but we will be the great generation. We'll be the great generation because we will reach, the land that we've once dreamed of, and it will become a reality. And it's spread all across the nation, and really, and in this lens, and in general, all across the world, or I could put all across the nations.
I showed you this when we were off the air earlier. This was my book that my mom got me, among many, many other books of great leaders in American history. And this was my favorite book. This is the original book. This is 50-something years old now. And I often think of your grandfather. When you were talking about how young you are and when you started when you were 7, I still am shocked when I think about how much your grandfather and your father-in-law, Arndrea, actually accomplished, because he passed when he was 39. He was so young. And so your youth and you starting so young, and how we overlook in many ways youth, I think focusing on our youth again is so important. And I think your words of spreading the word and betting on this next great generation, I think is more true than ever before. And I'm so glad you're spreading that word. And I want to leave it now to both of you to have the last word. Both of you take a turn before we have to say goodbye. The only thing I want to say before we have to say goodbye, I just need you to make me one promise, that one day when all three of us are vaccinated, when I come to Atlanta on business, we get to meet one day and have either a cup of tea or coffee or something like that together.
You got it. That's an easy one.
Coffee. I'm a tea drinker.
Well, we could drink tea. We could drink cocoa together. It's a great excuse for me to drink some cocoa with you. Then I'm cool with anything. So
I'll be having coffee.
All right, good.
I am a coffee drinker.
Big coffee drinker.
All right, that's good. But I want you both to have the last word, because this show is all about you and where you're coming from, and I want you both to take turns and before we sign off, and I want your words to be the last words that our listeners hear.
Would you like for me to go first?
Yes, I do that.
You need a moment to think.
But I don't want to give you the book. I don't want to give it to you.
Well, I hope that what I hope is that we have sparked a conversation for your listeners to have, both with themselves and with the people in their lives. I want your listeners to really know that we all can indeed create the world in which we have the courage to believe in. It is people throughout the ages have always continued to come together and push forward for more inclusion, for more expansion, and always, no matter what it looked like, no matter how many challenges that had to be overcome. In the end, love and truth always wins. And if love and truth haven't won, then the story is not yet over.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And Yolanda, I'm going to give you the last words, and then I'm going to give a couple of advertisements for your organizations before we say goodbye. But I want you to have the last words here.
Me next. Okay. But I would like to say that, you know, and I've repeated this, that for the young people, you can make change, you know. This isn't a adult issue. This isn't a one standard issue. And if you don't believe us, if you don't believe me, you know, you can look at the civil rights movement. The young people were like the mascots. And even, you know, you were mentioning how when my grandfather was assassinated, he was only 39 years old. So he wasn't too old.
Too old because he's looking at me.
No, I'm not saying.
She's like, he's older than you.
I'm looking at you. No, I'm looking at you to say, like, is that considered
old?
Is that considered
That's
offensive?
old. Yeah,
is that considered? No, I'm not saying he was old, but I'm saying, is that considered offensive to say, like, he wasn't too old? But he wasn't too old himself. You know, when you think about it, the movement started when he was in his late 20s, early 30s. And so I would like to say is, like I said, inspired, like be inspired, you know. And now we have something big, which is social media. You know, there are all these accounts on social media trying to raise awareness. And especially now, I feel social media has become even more important. Well, right now we're talking through a social media, but even social media such as Instagram and you know, TikTok and I don't really know if kids my age really have Facebook.
Kids my age have
So, like, I've heard Facebook. Well, no, some
You've
people
heard
have
about
Facebook,
Facebook.
or like Facebook and like Twitter. People read Twitter to read people's tweets.
Yeah, you're right.
News. They use Facebook and Twitter. Oh, I don't think a lot of kids tend to not have as much Facebook my age.
Okay.
Well, Facebook's like one of the older social medias.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
Okay, but enough with that. Well, I'm not trying to underestimate it or anything, but just use, you know, your social media platforms and use that to look for accounts. You know, there are influencers there, you know, dedicating their platform, dedicating their followers to put great stuff, and even looking at these big influencers like on TikTok and stuff, and you'll see that they'll put links on their accounts, like, hey, sign this petition, and so yeah.
Got it.
And so you so what I can say is that you can be a contributor, like a big contributor. So maybe you may not have too much time for clubs. You know, there's this thing called change.org. Oh, I said thing.
Yeah.
But there's a site called change.org.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can just go in there and, you know, my friends will do this and put it on group chats like, hey, will you sign this? They don't make the petition, but I guess they go on there and they maybe spend X amount of minutes signing petitions that they think could help, you know, like, and you could put on your group chats with friends, hey, can you sign these petitions? Or just going on, I don't know, 3 times, once a day even, just signing petitions, even if it's like for 5 minutes. You know, I've heard, I don't know too much about it, but I've heard of this extension that you can get on your Google Chrome, maybe on other things as well, but you can get it on your computer. And I think every time you open the tab or something, a tree will be planted. So, you know, there's all types of, you know, cool Google stuffs about that. And I know especially for those tech savvies out there, that will be great for them.
Yolanda and Arndrea, both of you, I just want to ask you, come back on this show whenever you want to come back and platform any other issues you want. You both are a joy to have on. It was my honor. This is the first time in 13 years I had a mother and daughter, and it's not going to be the last. And I want you both to come back on together again. For our listeners and viewers and readers, to find Arndrea and to find Yolanda and their dad, of course, Martin Luther King III, please go to the Drum Major Institute, drummajor.inst.org, or ML King, the number 3, Shegerian.com. Both of you have inspired me and our listeners and our viewers today. Both of you have given me more hope than I've had in a long time. And both of you are a joy and a pleasure. And I'm so grateful to both of you for making the world a better place. Thank you for joining us on the Impact Podcast today.
Thank you. And we'll certainly be back.
Well, there you have it. There's that generation. There you go.
I love your certainty and I love your energy. That just makes my day. So thank you both. And we are going to have you back, and we're going to meet in person one day too, as soon as we're all vaccinated.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for everything that you do in the world, both with your business and through this podcast. And so we thank you for doing your part in creating the beloved community.
Thumbs up emoji. On Zoom, or no, the heart emoji.
The heart. Okay.
I like that heart emoji. And like Mom says, we can all serve, and we just have to serve in the place that we're coming from. So she's right. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking engine revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With hundreds of athletes, entrepreneurs, speakers, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent for your next event. For more information, please visit letsengage.com.